Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Lunchtime with Live Animals at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. I'm Forrest Urban, the manager of Live Invertebrates. And today we're going to talk about overwintering. Maybe you've wondered, where do all the bugs go in the wintertime? Right? Where are they? Do they just disappear? Do they go extinct? And so it's kind of a complicated question because there's just a gigantic diversity of insects and spiders and scorpions. And there's also kind of a diversity of winter as well. Some places it freezes. Some places just gets really cold, and some places doesn't freeze at all. And so there's variations on what they do based on where they are, who they are, how they've evolved. And so let's just kind of look at some of the things that's going on. One thing that they can do is migrate, but this is kind of a special. Let me see if I can share my screen here. This is a special adaptation that few have, very, very few. Monarchs are the most famous of their huge migration route, right? Spans 4,000 something miles, but this is a really rare exception. Most insects and spiders are stuck in the locale where they were born, and there is no way that they can migrate. And so they've evolved to deal with what typically happens where they've evolved. And so the typical thing that, say, a spider will do if they're a normal, say, wolf spider or so, is to hunker down. And they'll find a crevice, a crack, even underneath the snowpack, surround themselves in leaf litter, pull their legs into their body, lower their metabolism so they're not spending a ton of energy, and just literally hunker down, what we would call hunker down. That's a great strategy and probably one of the most popular, but there are many, many more. Some insects have an aquatic portion of their lifespan, and being partially aquatic is also a great survival strategy because it's amazingly warm inside of the water. The part that doesn't freeze is actually a pretty consistent temperature, and there's tons of food down there for them to eat, other insects, lots of decaying matter, detritus for them to eat. So if you're like a dragonfly nymph, in other words, a naiad that you may know, you're thriving in the wintertime. That's your heyday. And so they'll spend years underwater as a naiad until eventually they go through their complete metamorphosis cycle and come out as a winged adult. So being an aquatic invertebrate is one cool strategy. But the real problem with wintertime isn't so much the cold. Cold doesn't hurt invertebrates that much because they have the ability to lower their metabolism, go through what we would call hibernating. It's freezing that's the danger, because when water, right, changes phase from a liquid to a solid, it turns into ice crystals, and those crystals are really destructive to cells, right? All of our whole body is composed of trillions and trillions of cells. Most of the cells are composed mostly of water. And so when ice crystals form and then ice crystals grow, that is really devastating for cells. But some invertebrates have evolved a way to prevent freezing. And so like we would have evolved to put antifreeze in our cars, right? That's a synthetic substance that we've created in the lab. They can synthesize it inside their bodies and bathe their cells in antifreeze to keep their cells from freezing. And lots of invertebrates produce antifreeze during the wintertime. It's expensive for them to make, so they are pretty conservative with it, but they'll use it. And then some insects are freeze tolerant, and so they can tolerate some of their cells actually freezing, and they will go completely frozen. And then when the temperatures increase, they'll thaw out and revive and be just fine. So they've selected which cells they're going to let freeze, crystallize, and get damaged, and which they're not. And they thrive being frozen. Now, this is called a snow spider. It's actually just a common name for a wolf spider. They come out in winter days in places like Washington and up in the north. And people will find them on the ice hunting. And so there have to be other things for them to eat. If you're going to be active in wintertime, you have to have food. And so there are things that they're actively up there hunting. They hunt crane flies. These are cool flies that look like gigantic mosquitoes, but they're actually a different type of fly, not a mosquito at all. They don't suck blood, and they pounce on these guys and eat them. And then there are also these little teeny tiny things that make snow look like it's dirty snow. And then if you look at the dirty snow really close, you can see that the dirty snow is like jumping and vibrating and bouncing all over the place. These are snow fleas. Snow fleas also have that antifreeze inside their body, and they're out there living it up on the snow. And these spiders are eating them like it's a buffet. This is what they look like up close. They're really teeny tiny. They're also called springtails because they have the ability to bounce and to jump and spring. And so they're about the size of a pepper that you like pour on your food, teeny tiny. But spiders, like we have our spider pavilion right now, right? Those are all orb weavers. Orb weavers have a life cycle of about a year, a little less than a year. And so the females will put out an egg sac. And then that's the end of their life, their life. They will pass away, and the next generation will exist in that egg sac. And so there are hundreds and hundreds, from 100 to about 500 eggs inside of this egg sac. They're protected from the environment because it's sealed off. And they also have a little bit of food in there because they're eating the yolk of the egg. And so sometimes they'll emerge in wintertime when it's still cold outside, but they're eating the yolk of the egg that they just hatched out of. Sometimes they're eating each other as well a little bit. And they overwinter that way in the egg sac. This is an egg sac of a garden spider. That's that big spider that makes that zigzag. Maybe you can go out and look for these in your yard or out at a park if you've seen garden spiders around. They're really big, really easy to see. And so, they're big. And we're going to look at those when we look at all of our things that we're going to look at today. And so this is some of them swarming around over each other. They've just emerged. They're still eating their eggs, their scrambled egg yolks, if you will, and surviving over the winter time. Super cute. They're just teeny tiny versions of the mini-me's that they are. And then another thing that's cool to learn about overwintering are moths, right? Moths are kind of a form of night flying butterfly. Moths evolved first on the planet back when the world was colder, darker, and there weren't any flowering plants. And so they're built for cold, essentially, because they have these really stout, hairy bodies that help them hold in the temperature that they would have absorbed from the outside, right? All invertebrates are ectotherms. We're endotherms. They get their heat from the environment. And so they'll, bask in the sun to absorb heat and then pull away from that to cool down. We generate our own heat inside of our bodies in our metabolism. And we can cool ourselves as well. So they're the opposite of us. But that doesn't mean they're not super, super, super tough. Super tough. And so a giant silk moth, as a caterpillar, will weave a superstructure, right? A type of cocoon in order to go through the winter months. And these cocoons are super strong. We're going to look at those in a minute. And it depends on the species, but they usually incorporate something else inside that cocoon, usually a leaf or two. And it's woven into the structure for reinforcement and protection from the elements and from predators as well. And then after the caterpillar weaves the whole structure and zips that caterpillar skin and turns into the pupa, and that's the part that goes through metamorphosis and kind of looks like a mummy, if you will, like an Egyptian mummy. All right, so let's see if we can look at some of the things here that I have to show you. So this is a giant atlas moth cocoon, and the pupa is inside. So the larva grabbed a leaf, right? This is the stem of the leaf here. This is the stem of the leaf, and laid the leaf down, and then they have jaws with silk spigots. So they have the ability to produce silk as a caterpillar, just like a spider has the ability to produce silk in its abdomen. They produce silk in their jaws. They pull this silk out and weave it, going over it multiple directions to create super strong structure. And then they will overwinter for months. Depending upon the type of silk moth it's going to turn into, they can stay in this for 6 months or so, going through development. And you can see the veins of the leaf incorporated into the structure. It's incredibly strong. You can hear her in there. Now, don't worry. This one is one of our collection objects. This one is not viable. But this is the moth. This is the cocoon of this moth. So this is the largest species of moth, the atlas moth from Southeast Asia. And when we go to our critter cam, we'll look closer at her body. She actually has really thick hairs on her body, scales that are modified like hairs for warmth and for coloration. You might be familiar with this one. This is a silk moth cocoon. You could also go out in wintertime, in the forest and find these, like dangling from trees like Christmas ornaments. And we slit this one open so that you could see the pupa inside. There she is. Now, they don't all make it, right? They don't all make it. There's a lot that can go wrong during development. They're also a food source for other animals, especially during wintertime when food is scarce. They are a prime food source. They don't all make it, and I hope you're not too disturbed by this one that is halfway in, halfway out of the pupa here. It didn't make it, but that's normal, okay? They have an extremely high reproductive rate just for this very reason, because they're a food source for other animals. They don't all make it. But I thought it was interesting to see. It's hard to imagine how they Houdini out of this weather and predator-proof structure, and somehow they find a weakness here at the top and they're able to push their way out. But sometimes they get stuck in doing so. But, in the wild, this wouldn't be wasted because it would be a really important source of nutrition for somebody, who's trying to get through the winter months and practically starving to death. And then we have our spiders. This is a spider egg sac that's also woven into leaf litter here. See all different types of silk incorporated, and it's just extremely strong. And so there would be, hundreds and hundreds of eggs all cozied in here. And we're going to look a little bit more about how eggs are laid, how females lay these egg sacs when we talk about slime in upcoming weeks. Stay tuned for that. And then here's another one. Now, this one is a tropical species. And you can see it actually has holes in it because in the tropics, right, they don't have to worry about winter. It's pretty much a consistent temperature all year round. So freezing is not an issue. And so it has ventilation holes here so it doesn't get too moldy and stuff on the inside. But it's still just super strong, right? I'm pulling on this as hard as I can, and I can't even budge it. It's just incredibly strong. And then there's the pupa in there. Hi. All right, this one has already emerged, so that was just the pupal shell because the adult is emerged. And And then, let's see, I'm going to see if I can get I was having a problem with my other camera, but I'm going to see if I can get it to work to show you just another tarantula and its amazing webbing that they do as their weatherproofing. Just see all of that is just a labyrinth of silk. See, she's there. It's her mouth, her fangs, and then it's just a whole labyrinth of silk that she's woven as her protective, winterized structure. Yep. So, sorry guys, let me turn my camera back on. There's lots of different adaptations for overwintering, and invertebrates just depends on where you are, what kind of invertebrate you are, and what you've evolved to do. You can migrate, maybe if you're one of the very few ones that can migrate. You can stick it out where you are by hunkering down, slowing your metabolism, and coming out on days when it's warmer and you know that there's other things around to eat. You can overwinter in another life stage that has a more protective structure that you can weave, like a cocoon or something. If you're aquatic, you'll stay underneath where it's safe and warm in the water. So it just depends. Or maybe you've evolved antifreeze in your body, and you can produce your own antifreeze and you'll be fine that way. Either way, it's amazing adaptations. Well, thank you so much. And as always, you can find us on Instagram, and Leslie will be doing another version of this. After we're going to do some slime things a couple of times, then we're going to come back to hibernating, I think. So thank you so much. Look forward to your questions. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.